Just a little bit of information about me. I am a native of Atlanta, Georgia. I have both my undergraduate and graduate degrees from the University of Georgia in education, and I also have a second degree in human resource management from Troy University. I have been working in admissions for over 10 years, and currently I'm employed at Southeastern University as the admissions counselor for the physician assistant program for approximately 7 years. So I will go ahead and regroup. So today I'm going to be covering the presentation of the 5 Ws and how I'm preparing and applying to physician assistant programs. The chat box is live during the presentation, and there'll be a question and answer at the end. And currently right now, you all are not able to see me. You're only going to be able to see the presentation. For those of you who have said you're not able to see me. So just kind of want to let you know that you should be seeing the presentation. So the 5 Ws and how. The 5 Ws are who, what, when, where, how, and why. And I'm going to be using these 6 questions to share with you different things that you need to think about in preparing for PA school. So the first one is who. For who, you want to know who is your point of contact for admissions and what is the preferred method of communication. You want to have an idea of whether or not you're going to be working with someone who specifically is in the program and working with prospective students, or you want to know whether or not you're going to be contacting someone from the graduate admissions, or are you speaking with a specific person that has been assigned to work with the students for one particular program. Each graduate program is set up differently. And so you want to have an idea of the different people that you may be speaking with based on the school that you are applying, so that you can make sure that you are communicating to the accurate person to get the information that you need. Second, you want to ask what? You want to ask what are the components of a completed application for each program that you're applying? You want to be knowledgeable of what type of documents do you need to gather to make sure that each school that you are selecting to apply to, that you have those appropriate documents so that your application can be completed. You also want to ask, what are the admission requirements for each program? Each program is not going to be the same. There are going to be lots of similarities and overlaps in the admissions requirements, but there also are going to be some differences. So you want to make sure for each program that you're applying to that you understand exactly what those admissions requirements are. One of the things that I share with my students is that admissions requirements are very similar to job requirements. You want to go through the list and you want to check off. Do I have this? Do I have this? And then if you see something that you do not have, then you need to be honest with yourself and determine whether or not that's an institution you want to apply, because it will show up that you are missing an admissions requirement. You also want to ask, what are the prerequisites for each program? In general, the prerequisites for most of the PA programs are very similar. However, there are 1 or 2 courses that will be different amongst some of the programs that you are applying to. So you want to have a list of what are the prerequisites for the program so that you can ensure that you have met all of those requirements. And when you submit your application, you'll be submitting everything that is necessary for you to be considered as an applicant. Step 3 is where. Where are the location of the schools that you're applying to? It's really important for you to have an idea of how far are you willing to travel for PA school and what is in that environment for you. We want to be connected to where we live. So it's really important to know, where are you applying to go to school? Do you see yourself living there for the length of the program? Does that environment offer you what you need for you to be comfortable? You also want to know from the program, if this information is available, the location of the clinical sites, so that you have an idea when you get to your clinical year to the level of travel that may be required, so that you could be prepared mentally that you are going to be traveling, but also financially having an understanding of what additional funds you might be needing through the clinical year. Then you want to think about, where does your support system live? That's really important. Wherever we go, we always need to know that those people who support us are near. And so you need to think about, your support system. How far am I from these individuals, so that when there are times that you need to refresh and have other people that there for you, okay, this is a 5-hour drive, this is a plane ride. When there are breaks in between classes, that you can financially afford to return back home and then can return back to your support system. Step 4 is when. You want to ask, when is the CASPA deadline? You need to know whether or not the CASPA deadline is based on your application being verified, your application being submitted or received. You also want to ask, when are official test scores due? That's really important, because you can submit an application and potentially not submit your test scores. However, your application may not be complete without those test scores. So you need to make sure that you understand, are they the same exact deadline or are they different deadlines? You also want to ask, when is the deadline for supplemental applications? Some schools only require the CASPA, and some schools require a supplemental application or graduate application for their physician assistant program. So you want to make sure that you're aware of whether or not you're submitting multiple applications and the different deadlines. You also want to know, when does the program start? Not all programs start at the same exact time. And so if you're applying to multiple programs, you want to be knowledgeable of when does this program start, such that if you are accepted, you understand the amount of time that you would have to relocate if necessary, or to get the things in order to start the program. You also want to ask, when are outstanding courses required to be completed? Some programs will require you to submit an application and have courses in progress for the summer or courses in progress for the fall. And so you want to make sure that you understand, for your particular situation, if you have outstanding courses, when are they required to be completed? Step 5, how. You want to ask, how is the program taught? That's really important. We all learn different ways, and we want to be cognizant of how are you going to be learning when you are in that program. So that's really important, to make sure that you're doing your research. You have an understanding of how the information will be communicated to you. Currently, right now, the programs may be teaching via online, or using the Zoom platform, or using Canvas or Blackboard. However, once our situation changes, then they may return back to traditional classroom. So you need to really have an understanding of how will the program teach you throughout this time. You also want to understand, how are clinical rotations assigned? Are you part of that process? Does the school assign them to you? Or are you responsible for assisting in identifying clinical rotations? You also want to ask, how are you notified if offered an interview? And so that is a common question that students want to know is, I've submitted my application. What is my application status? When does the student start interviewing? How will you notify me? So it's really important for you to understand each individual school's process, especially if they're doing rolling admissions. Your application could be take several months before you actually receive notification. Then you also want to ask, how do you secure your seat if accepted? And so if you're offered an interview and you're offered acceptance, there typically is a deposit process. So you want to be knowledgeable of that for each program, such that if you are interviewing with multiple schools and receive multiple offers, you have an understanding of what your time frame is to make your final decision. And step 6 is why. Why are you planning to apply to each program? That's really important, is to explain why you are applying to each program. And I do apologize. I see that the clip art covered some of this, but you want to ask yourself, why are you applying to each program? You need to make sure that that particular program meets what you're looking for. You also want to ask, why do you want to become a physician assistant? This is really important, because if you are offered an interview, you need to be able to articulate, why do you want to become a PA? And then, why are you a good applicant for the program you are applying? The PA application process, the interview process, is extremely competitive. Different programs have different numbers of seats. And so it's important for you to be able to articulate, why are you a good applicant for that particular program? Why should they select you? So in essence, why you? So you are selling yourself. You want to be genuine, and you want to be able to articulate these things so that the schools that are looking for at you as an applicant could see what you bring to the table. And so I'm going to go ahead and open it up and see if there are any questions. So there's a question about military experience, and any experience that you have that is related to healthcare, you should be provided. Each school looks at experience differently. And so it's just important just to list it and give them an opportunity to understand your background. So the question is, if you have a competitive GPA, what areas of the application should an applicant focus on? If your GPA is not competitive, then I recommend the first thing you do is speak with the school that you're interested in and find out what they're looking for overall in an applicant. Applicants can be selected that are not or do not have a competitive GPA because they bring other things to the table. The application process is usually holistic to some extent, in that schools aren't just looking for one characteristic. So if you feel you're not competitive academically, I would start with that particular program and learn more about what else are they looking for. So there's a question about how do you improve your science GPA? If your science GPA is below the required GPA for that particular school, then you have to be honest with yourself and look at how many additional courses would you need to be take, and is it financially feasible? And so at the end of the day, if this is something you want to do, then you have to look at what are the necessary steps to get to that GPA, and is it realistic? So there's a question about how many PA schools do you recommend applying, and do you prefer in-state students? I'm a firm believer you should apply to as many programs as you can financially afford and that you meet the admissions requirements. And you cast your net in-state and out-state just based on your interests, the programs, and whether or not you meet the admissions requirements. So I have provided an Excel spreadsheet that already has drop downs and it has free fields that you all can use to organize yourself for the different programs that you are applying. This way you can go through the spreadsheet, identify everything that you need in regarding applying for the program, and then be able to identify whether or not you meet all those requirements. This way, as you're going through the application process and preparing, you know that you meet exactly what each school requires. Some schools may share with you that your application is incomplete and give you an opportunity to submit missing documents, and then some schools do not. So as an applicant, you have to take the responsibility on the front end to ensure you understand what is necessary to have a completed application. So if there aren't any specific questions to my presentation, I'm going to go ahead and log off of the video, but I will continue to be in the chat room and be able to answer questions in the chat box.